such a one-sided, it's unfortunate, but it's so one-sided, just a chronic lack of development and persistent underclass status and lack of contributions to mankind. I mean, certainly in the arts and in athletics, but no inventions, no philosophers, no true great masterpieces, anything like that, in terms of fine art, really. And then you have the whole planet is like this, you know? I mean, if half of Africa was super developed or halfway developed and the other half wasn't, maybe you'd have an argument, but it's whether they're socialist or capitalist, whether they got colonized or not, whether they got freed from slavery in 1800 or in 1860, or it's the same story everywhere. There's not one written language among them. You know, you talk about he who controls the printing press. They don't have books. They don't have words to put in the books. And I think that, you know, it's a sad fact of the world, but it's something we have to deal with. And to me, that's the only conclusion that satisfies. And don't get me wrong, I get where you're coming from. I'm not, you know, I'll give you an example. My family lived in Chicago for 4 or 5 generations. And my parents and my grandmother, they had a security firm in the city. They taught cops and security guards how to shoot their guns and gave them licenses and things like that. And almost all their clientele were black. And when I was growing up, this was impressed upon me at an early age. They always said the older generations in Chicago, when my grandmother was growing up in the projects, when my parents were running this business in the 80s and 90s, they said they were the most polite, the most pious, the most considerate. Right. Some of them couldn't read, though. You know, they would come in and not be able to read, but they were less dysfunctional than my family. You know, my grandmother, her mother had mental illness, and she would look outside the window in the projects and see a black family across the way, and they were sitting around the table holding hands saying grace, and it was an intact family. So I completely agree with you. So, obviously, there's a cultural destruction. Obviously, there's a cultural decline, but I think that was constant, even though the older generation was more genteel. I think that, honestly, that came from oppression. That came from a society where they were the minority. There was racism, there was abuse, there was segregation, and I think that made black people meek. And if you look, the out-of-wedlock birth rate started to blow up, not after Great Society in the late 60s, but in the 50s during the Civil Rights era. And I think that was sort of a regression to the mean moment. And, you know, again, I think that it's not that black people can't be good people. There aren't smart black people, or there aren't, you know, incredible black people. I'm sitting across from one right now, or yay, and everything like that. But on the whole, on average, and there's billions of black people, they do have that lower level of development, and I think that's why they underperform.